If we look at different indicators, we can get a good picture of what's coming. In this case, we look to the past 30 years, analyze the data, and fit the puzzle pieces together. Hang on, this could be a bumpy ride. You came here for the truth, so let me unveil that for you. Today we're going to look at this issue, plus I want to get into Venezuela. Let's begin right here. We are looking at the Russell 2000. So we're getting a broad sense of the stock market here, more so than just one individual market. And what you can see is that for the past 30 years, we have seen seasonally a decline. We are talking about from July to October. We tend to see a period of weakness and potential declines. That's just going back 30 years. This does not declare that there will be a crash. But all the market needs right now is that sense of weakness, and I believe it could trigger that domino effect. But let me show you more of the details here. As you look to this, the Russell 2000 declined in 17 of 30 cases in the seasonally weak period. So if you're looking at this chart right now, what you will notice is what they point out here, but essentially that you have 3 moments in which there were major declines. We're talking 25% or more on the markets, and that occurred during this time frame. You also note that the declines are more significant than the positives. I mean, you look at it, the growth here or the gains here would be potentially very small, whereas the downside potential seems to be very high. That's what I'm noting from these pieces of information. What you can see with this is that we may have some issues to deal with in the coming months. Many people do predict generally that October is a weak time, September is a weak time. There's always sort of a potential catastrophe that occurs around that time, just because there is ultimately some weakness that occurs in that time frame. I don't know what's going to happen, but all I look for now is simply a trigger, and that is a spark. That is something that could happen, and it may seem like it was nothing, but all of a sudden you have another Lehman Brothers. You have another Bear Stearns. You have another AIG fiasco and everything else. Who knows? But I do know that these markets are weak. They're being supported by the central bankers, and all we need to see is one thing to set this off. As you can see, the color red clearly predominates. Not only do losses occur more frequently, on average, they also tend to be larger than the gains. In other words, short positions not only had a greater average win rate than long positions, they also delivered higher average profits. Now, I want to get into something here because a lot of people come onto this channel. I see them in the comments, and that's quite unfortunate. Many people have shorted the market. This is something that you really need to know what you're doing. You need to be aware of the potential downsides to that. If there are easy monetary policies, the stock market can continue upward. And what that means is that the dollars, the currency which it's being measured in, is being devalued. That's the way it works. Central banks print up the money and they send the stock market higher. This is a way to increase profits for these quasi-government, semi-private institutions known as central banks. And you as an individual, you may not know when they will stop or, allow this crash to occur. We don't know. We can guess. We can look at the indicators. We can take a guess. But ultimately, we really don't know. So, those who have shorted the market, I don't advise that. In fact, I don't advise investing in the market at all at this time. I think it's too risky. That's my personal opinion. You can do what you want. Many people have quote unquote made money. They haven't realized any of their gains, but they have somehow made money. And if so, by all means, do so. I wish you all the best. And I'm not being sarcastic. I really do. I just do not advise investing, either shorting or buying. You need to do that on your own time. I just want to absolve myself of that. Paper, in my opinion, too risky right now. The United States does not rule out, switching gears by the way, does not rule out barring imports of Venezuela oil when taking action to address the situation in the country. Maduro right now is engaged in somewhat of a civil war. And we can see that people are fed up. They're tired. They are starving. And they're dealing with a leader who has two factions. It's clear. You have some of those that approve of him, approve of the government. They want Chavez back ultimately. And then you have on the other side where people are just saying, out with the government. We need something better. They want him out. Whatever comes, happens. Now, I think that this could give rise to something even worse, but we'll see where it goes. I don't think right now the trajectory is basically into a grave, so I don't think this is a good thing, what's happening. I don't know what's going to come of all of this, but if the US bars Venezuela, it's going to be a big detriment unless a country like China steps in and says, oh, all right, well, if they're not going to buy it, we will. So I think we need to look for that as well. Keep an eye on what China does. This is key because you're looking at the imports over the years. They have declined. Naturally, they have been declining. And that's not a result of what we had seen recently. We're noting the fact that for the last, let's say, 20 years, the U.S. has been importing less and less and less from Venezuela. So if these do drop off, I think it does present a big problem right now at this time when they need to sell every bit of oil that they bring up from the ground. This will hurt them. And that's the point. That's what they're trying to do. A nationwide strike brought parts of Venezuela to halt Thursday as the opposition ramped up its challenge to Maduro that has already seen 4 months of deadly street protests and threats of U.S. economic sanctions. So more people dying. The death toll is approximately at 99. I don't know what will happen. I think that there could be outside intervention, military intervention, as related to a humanitarian effort. So they can get the NATO troops in there, UN troops in there, and flip this place upside down. They can knock out the dictator in power, put a puppet in, and we'll see. I'll leave it at that. You know what I've talked about with Venezuela. There's going to be more mayhem because of the strike. There's going to be more people getting injured and dying. And it isn't good for the people, the citizens of Venezuela who are being hurt by this. And last but not least, I just thought this was, something important to share. Developers plan to demolish a historic Notre Dame church in Worcester, erect a 4-story luxury apartment building. And you can see that this is something that happens in probably your city as well. We see this in Toronto all the time, where these old buildings that maybe they need a little bit of refurbishment, but ultimately they are historic buildings. They will build a condo right on top. And that's sad for some and good for others who are making money off of it. The capitalists will say that it's a good idea, and those individuals who are, let's call them preservationists, will say we can't do that. Whatever side you're on, I just see the fact that there's always money to be made by somebody, and you can get around any rules you want. The way it works in Toronto is you have this, or Ontario, in fact, Ontario Municipal Board, whereby if you want to build a, let's say, 50-story tower, the public says no, you appeal to the Ontario Municipal Board and they approve it. And so that's the way it works. You take these neighborhoods which can't support the amount of people that they have already. Streets aren't enough, the sidewalks are too small, there's too much traffic. And then you want to build, let's say, 12 new condo towers, each at approximately 30 to 50 stories. And then you want to expect that somehow the infrastructure can keep up. It won't. That's why you have terrible congestion, and that is a true fact going on in Toronto, and I'm sure it's going on in the cities that you live in as well. So that's all I wanted to say for this video. If you found it informative, please give me a thumbs up. And last but not least, if you found this video informative, I know you'll find my books, The Money GPS, and my new release, Global Economic Collapse, even more informative. So what you can do if you want to look through them, there's a link in the description below that will take you over to Amazon, where you can flip through the pages for yourself. Take care.